the show ever since back when it was called Containing COVID. And God, I hate to keep saying unfortunately, but unfortunately, he's made a lot of predictions that have come true. And so I definitely want to get him on to talk with him. Right now, though, let's head into the KUAM News Zoom room, Bree, where we have standing by. I know that they're kind of trying to make sense as we're about 19 days into this new fiscal year. How to do not necessarily even more with less, but even trying to do the same with less. We're talking about the budget, public safety, of course, the Guam Police Department will bring on. We have Chief Steve Ignacio, and he's joined by the spokesman for GPD, Sergeant Paul Tapao. Welcome to the link. Chief, Sarge, good morning.
Morning, Chris. Morning, Sabrina.
Good morning.
Morning, KUM team.
Good morning, Sarge. Thanks for joining us. I know it's a little bit early, but hey, let's. we got some worms.
It's okay. My Steelers beat Baker Mayfield and the Browns, so
hey, Baker Mayfield, hey, go down there.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't beat the Browns? Sorry, old Browns joke.
Yeah, okay. No, I know they're like one of the worst. Anyway,
I mean, they were when I was growing up.
You guys.
They are. See, they're good now. This
That's
must
because
be
of Baker Mayfield.
It must be 2020 if the Browns are doing good.
Okay. Anyway.
Okay, 717 Chief. So let's just get right into it, right? So the budget came out. Unfortunately, you guys, you got a big cut. So just starting the conversation there. When you looked at what you got, I know there was a lot of planning that went in with the department before the budget was even passed, right? So what were some of the things that you guys were looking at being able to do, and some of the things that you might not be able to do with less money?
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Sabrina, for inviting me to today's show. Really appreciate the time. But yeah, so our budget, we were tracking $1.4 million less than what we had projected and what we had asked the legislature in the executive budget request. But, understanding these are very different times, and understanding that across the board, all government agencies, I believe, have received a cut to their budget. So, that means that you take what you have and you take a good look at it with your fiscal team, and you make sure that you pay what needs to be paid. And of course, the first priority is our personnel, and making sure that we have a budget that covers all our personnel costs, salaries and benefits all the way up until September 30th of 2021. So that's the first priority. The second priority is, of course, keeping the lights and the water on, and the telephone or the communication lines. So that would be their second priority. And that's guidance also as well from Lester Carlson and his team down at BBMR. So we did that. And then the third priority would be your essential operations. That's all your contractuals. That's things like your leases, your maintenance agreements for like our radio and for our mobile system, our records management system. And, some other bare essentials like, papers, copier paper, and certain things, that have to be funded, just like, essential things like toilet paper and paper towel, things that are needed at the buildings and the precincts so that we can function 24/7. But as we plotted that out and we started to fund the different categories, right off the bat, we were short. We were short on fuel. We could not budget for fuel. Our fuel costs hover around $375,000 annually, and so that's something that we couldn't fund right out the bat as we left the gate. Overtime, there's no budget for overtime. So as you sit down here and you face the reality is. There's no way that you can operate a police department or any department for that matter without any fuel costs because we have government official vehicles that we need to use to drive to do our daily business. And so we had to make sure that we budgeted for it, but understanding that we were not going to make it till the end of the fiscal year. So we look at the budget in itself and you dissect it and you see where there's money to be saved, or there's money that's not being spent. So one of the things is that when we have these officers that are in the Guard or Reserve and they go for deployment for 1 year, 6 months, 3 months, or whatever, how long it is, when you're not paying their salaries and their benefits, that means that money is available then now because it's projected for the 12 months. That money is now available, and we can take that money and we can use it to offset some of the shortages. So again, we were short for our maintenance agreement for Motorola. That was about $200,000. No money budgeted for fuel, no money budgeted for overtime. And some of our other leases, we went to experience a shortage in the projected budget for that. But again, we're making it up. There's some other areas that we identified. So like some surplus funds from FY20 that we found or we've not used is the Safe Schools Initiative. I think we're tracking about $250,000 in that appropriation. Another $108,000 in our police patrol vehicle fund, and that's important because if we can use that $108,000, that'll help to cover about a third of our fuel costs for FY21. And then we're going to be using, and we've had this discussion with our analyst at BBMR and Mr. Lester Carlson. Thanks to his team, for working with us. I really do truly appreciate their hard work. We're going to be able to use the FY19 continuing appropriation to fund the new police recruits that we hire. So we're looking at maybe upwards of $500,000 in personnel costs, salaries, and benefits that we can use in the FY19 budget or the continuing appropriations into our 21 budget. So that's $500,000 in our 21 budget that we can now move to offset some of the shortages. So it is a challenge, but just rest assured that there's no shortage of service to the community. We continue to provide the service to the community. Patrol will be staffed, and any shortages of patrol can and will be offset by some of our specialized units. We have the Special Operations Division, we have a Highway Patrol Division, and when they're not doing their regular duties, they can come in and help offset some of the work that the patrol officers will be doing or are unable to respond to.
That was a lot of information, Chief.
Yeah, it is.
Can we just go back to just the shortage on fuel? So you guys were shorted some money on that. Are you guys having to scale back then on patrolling?
No. So what we've done is, we used to allow the what we call the take-home vehicles. Our detectives, our highway patrol, myself, some of our specialized units. But what we're doing is that I've instructed that there's no more take-home vehicles for the unmarked, especially. So that means the officers will have to, drive to and from work with their personally owned vehicles, and that includes everybody. Myself is part of that cost savings plan. Again, it's nickels and dimes, but in these times where we're short $1.4 million, nickels and dimes help. When we have to save nickels and dimes.
Right.
So,
I did want to ask about, like, for example, executive security. Are you guys having to pull back at all with regards to executive security? Like, for example, do you guys pay for the gas for executive security?
Yes, we pay for the lease of their vehicles and also for the fuel and of course the personnel. The personnel has decreased again, like I said, down to 12 people there. It used to be as high as 18 at one point. Again, they're also subject to the officers assigned up there. If they have any unmarked government official vehicles, they're also subject to that same mandate. The only vehicles that are exempt, of course, the governor, lieutenant governor, and whenever they go, they're on the clock and they're considered 24/7. So when we drive them, it's an official course of business.
12 people assigned executive security? Is that what you
Yes,
said?
12, just 12 now. We used to have 18.
Who are they assigned to?
I'm sorry.
Who are 12 executive GPD officers assigned to for executive security?
So we have the drivers, and then we have the executive security at the residence, and that's government house. That's the only place that we're providing security for. There's no security at any of private residence. The governors moved into government house. And so that's where security is provided 24/7.
So what areas are you looking at cutting? What services?
There's no cut to service.
No.
What we're doing is just taking a
Moving
look
money
again.
around?
Just moving money around, finding money that is available. That, like I said, from the FY20, there's money from the Patrol Vehicle Fund. There's $108,000 there. There's $250,000 from the Safe Schools Initiative. And I've been working with Mr. Lester Carlson at BBMR, and what we're doing is we're going to be able to avail of CARES Act funding from October to December, and that's all regular and overtime personnel costs. So I'm looking at possibly a savings of about a little over $1 million in just regular personnel salaries and benefits. So if we're able to pay those regular salaries and benefits for the officers that are directly involved with the COVID response, that's $1 million that I can now take out of my FY21 budget and cover the offset those shortages that I just talked about. And
So are you
that's a saving for me
saying that they have not been paid their overtime?
No, all overtime is being paid for, and all overtime is being covered.
Okay, so you guys are
we're
current.
still processing. Yeah, we're still processing. I think the last I checked, we're up till late August, if not early September, as far as overtime payment. So we're on track to pay out all the overtime for FY20.
Okay. I wanted to ask about Halloween. Have you guys, what are you guys planning on doing? Have you heard like what the governor, is she going to tell everybody no Halloween, no trick-or-treating or anything like that?
No, I haven't heard anything. I do know, I think there may be a couple of, I think there's one organization that we're being invited to. I think it's Thrive up in Dededo. It's I forget what the I think it's run by Westcare Pacific and the mayor's office in Dededo.
Yeah.
So I think they're doing a concept of a drive through Halloween. I'm not very certain of that, but that's what I've heard. And I believe we've been invited to that. We haven't confirmed yet.
Okay.
Yeah, so if I may, being a part of the Joint Information Center, we've been sharing the message coming out of the CDC about low risk Halloween activities and the recommendation. And we've yet to actually push out any hard information about the government's movement. And we're seeing private businesses do low risk Halloween activities where kids are not going to be exposed. So the CDC guidelines is pretty much what we are so far advising the community to partake in some of these Halloween festivities. And again, the CDC's recommending a low risk at the to the community and understanding what they can do to stay safe. Again, dealing with the COVID-19 and with the Thrive, we're still meeting to finalize that. The Guam Police Department is part of the membership with the drug-free community, drug-free Dededo. We finalized that, and because of the numbers, we might reconsider that depending on where we go for the next week or so. So these are things that come into play, but moving forward, we will have more information provided by the Joint Information Center.
Right. Yeah, I already have the low risk tips is provided on the CDC website, and we're actually going to be pushing that out as well. What about the status of the confirmed positive cases over at GPD? How many police officers have tested positive and have recovered?
So I believe we had a total of 12 police officers that have tested positive since the pandemic started. And I believe all of the officers have fully recovered, with the exception of one who's still in home isolation after being released from medical care. All the others have returned back to duty.
Okay, and they were all, I want to say, special investigation section. What department were they from?
They were from various specialized units.
Okay, that's it, specialized units.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about crime, Chief and Sarge? What type of a crime? Because with this new PCOR one, it's not like the first time where everyone was really staying home, and if you were going around in the middle of the night, you really stuck out, right? Now it kind of seems like there's a lot of mobility, and I'm just seeing stuff on social media where people are talking about bush cutters getting stolen, and so is that the majority of the type of crime that we're responding to with the department, Chief and Sarge?
Chris, the last time we looked at crime calls for service and actual crimes being reported, there's actually a downward trend. I shared that with Sergeant Paul, and we can push that out to you, the official numbers. But we do understand that the social media is there, it's present. And so we see a lot of it. I'm a member of various different neighborhood watch chat groups. I also actively monitor what's being posted on social media like Facebook. And so, I see things just like everybody else in the community. And so the more we see it, the more we think that there's more crime. But the numbers show that there's a decrease. There was a decline in crime. There's a decline in calls for service at the Guam Police Department. But, no matter what, though, the officers are still there 24/7, and we're still there to respond. I think over the weekend, we had an incident, I think, involving Senator Will Castro.
Right.
And, they had a very vigilant community watch group. And I believe one of his neighbors was key to the apprehension of the suspect.
Right.
So, kudos. We don't encourage that, but, kudos to the neighborhood watch groups, for having each other's back. And that's really a key to being a part of your neighborhood watch group.
What
is
about
having each other's back.
what about GPD? Are you guys issuing citations? Because we see it, like you said, on social media where people aren't sure where to report violations where they're exceeding the guidelines and the governor's executive orders, right, for gatherings. Are you guys taking calls, a lot of calls regarding that? And have you issued any citations? And if so, what sort of citations?
No, yeah. So the Guam Police Department does not issue citations. What we do is we partner up with the Division of Environmental Health at Public Health. And so, for instance, we responded to McCrouts in Malolo a second time again this weekend, and another. I understand that another notice of violation was issued to the establishment, the owner.
Wow, Sarge, can you give us a little more info on that? What was if you could describe the scene when the officers arrived at McCrouts in Malolo for the second weekend in a row?
Chris, I'd have to go through my notes, but I do know that I did read a synopsis from one of the officers that they responded there, and environmental health from public health was also there. I think before the officers arrived, and the officers were informed that they were issued a notice of violation. And I think this is under the public nuisance law. Again, the Guam Police Department does not issue violations or citations in these instances. This is a public health emergency, and so that is left with the public health agency.
So you guys just go and respond and do what?
And we take a police report that there's a violation occurring, and then we forward that police report to the Attorney General's office.
Right. Sarge,
And so now it's a collaboration between the AG's office and public health on how to move forward.
Sarge, if your officers arrive on a scene and environmental health has issued the violation, and let's say, for example, they're over capacity, do the officers then assist in like maybe directing people to leave or whatever has to be done?
Yeah, we support the efforts with DPHS. I mean, it's a collaborative, unified approach. As Chief had mentioned, when we annotate it and capture that into our reports, it gets forwarded to the AG's office. So the AG has the discretion of moving as to where the citation or the reporting agency sees fit, whether recommending it being forwarded to Department of Revenue Tax, or taking the action as we have did with effection and arrest with the violation of the quarantine facilities. But our officers are there to support and to make sure that nothing escalates further than allowing Department of Public Health to carry out their deeds, and of course being able to enforce it. And should anything escalate, we have our officers there. So the Guam Police Department's 24-hour operation with our COVID response task force, we've responded to a slew of calls alongside with DPHSS. So working collectively, the citation and of course the reports that are forwarded to the AG's office, it's compiled, and again, the AG has the discretionary powers to move where it sees fit in issuing a citation, or of course, furthering the citation with Department of Revenue Taxation.
What's this COVID response task force?
So we have our COVID operations that works closely with the DPHS, as mentioned earlier with the executive order. We started with the beach and park enforcement, and since the governor has allowed the use of parks with a minimum of 5, our officers work closely with G4S's VSO. I mean, those guys have been instrumental down in the Tumon area in assisting our guys. And then we have our response team that works closely with DPHS should they go into these establishments that we get the calls or the tips about violation, whether it be social gathering or over the limit or some sort of business violation. So we work in tandem and closely with them.
So you guys basically get the call from like public health, but say I'm at home and I see a huge gathering at my neighbor's house. Who would I call? Would I call GPD or would I call public health or 311?
So yes, I got it. So sorry, Sarge. So yeah, people can call 311, and there's the prompt to GPD, and we do have 24/7 coverage to respond to these 311 calls for social gatherings or large congregations, and we have responded to numerous calls within the villages. We've responded to calls in Malolo, Derido, Barrigada, and these are sometimes birthday parties. I think we had a rosary up in Mepa Street, I think in Derido last week. So we do get calls from the community, and we do respond, and we do advise people. And sometimes public health is not there to respond with us, but we do advise people. There's an executive order in place, and we ask them if they can kindly adhere to the executive order. And 99.9% of the time, people are compliant with the request and understanding that there's an executive order in place.
Right. So you go out there and you kind of just advise them you're not supposed to violate an executive order, even though an executive order doesn't trump law, right?
Yeah, and we ask, we tell them that there's an executive order. We advise them that it's in violation of the executive order. Like I said, 99.9% of the time, people comply. We've never had an incident that I can recall where things got out of hand. People understand that we're just there to do what we need to do, and people are very, very compliant.
Right, but we still see people doing social gatherings and things like that. Has there been any discussion to maybe introduce legislation to put some teeth into this?
Yes, I've been in discussion with some the AG's office and also with the governor's legal counsel, and I think we are working on maybe a path forward in requesting to introduce legislation, but that's a discussion that's still in the making, and hopefully sometime soon we'll be able to introduce proposed legislation. Whether or not it passes, again, that's up to the legislation.
Yeah,
It's kind of sad, Chief. I wish our people would step up and follow these orders. It's sad that we now have to think about what kind of penalties. And then I feel for your guys too, because you're going out there with with no teeth in this enforcement. You talk about 99.9% of the people get it. What about those 0.1ers? Those annoying 0.1% of those people. What are some of the things that they're telling your officers?
I haven't gotten any feedback from the officers. Like I said, there's nothing that has risen to the level where, the officers had to make an arrest because somebody became disorderly or somebody tried to assault a police officer because they were trying to break up a gathering or some sort of congregation. Like I said, people have been compliant, and people have been very understanding of the fact that, we're just there to advise people and enforce executive order. Nothing more, nothing less.
Is there any other message you'd like to get out to the community? I know we're heading into Halloween next week. Anything before we let you go?
Yeah, Bree, I'd like to close off though. To the community again, we're still here, 24/7. You can count on us anytime, any place. Lastly, though, I'd like to close off with this. Early last week, Friday, I was informed of the passing of the late Lieutenant Robert J. Avalona. Lieutenant Avalona retired from the Guam Police Department in 2019. His retirement is fairly new to the department. He was gone for less than a year. To his family, his wife Shirley, and their children, we extend our heartfelt condolences on his passing. And so to the family and to Shirley and the children, just know that we mourn the loss of Lieutenant Bob just as much as you do. And we extend our prayers and condolences to her.
Thank you for that, Chief. Sarge, thank you so much for waking up early for us.
Absolutely.
But you guys are lucky. We have virtual empanada in the KUAM News Zoom room. Don't worry, Chief. It's no fat. Low to no fat.
Thanks again. And again, echoing Chief Ignacio, it's going to be missed. Lieutenant Avalana, loved among the guys. And thanks, Chief, for that. That really, thank you guys. Stay safe.
Yeah, Chief. We definitely heard this last week, and it's good to see something official come out on the record for the men and women in blue out there. Chief, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Bree.
Okay.
Take care.
Stay safe.
Appreciate it. Okay, that's that.
Wash your hands, Chris. Wash your hands.
I did. We put in a hand washing sink in here. It's under the desk. Okay. See you, Chief. See you, Sarge.
Bye.
That's that. Okay. 7:41. Real quick break. Coming back with Dr. Peter Lombard crunching COVID stats next on the link. It's the Breeze 93.9. Good morning.
Celebrate National Pizza Month with the Pepsi Pizza